Most people talk too much because they're afraid of disappearing. They speak to be seen, not to understand. They fill silence with words because silence feels like failure. But silence is not the absence of power. It's where power begins. Welcome to How to Speak Less, Understand More, an audiobook for those who are ready to rise above noise, to build strength through awareness, and to master the art of presence in a world that never stops talking. In this audiobook, you'll learn how to use silence as a strategy, not as retreat. You'll discover how to read what others miss, how to win without arguing, how to connect without over-explaining, and how to listen in a way that makes people reveal more than they ever intended. You'll learn how to pause before reacting, how to study tone, how to recognize emotion before words even form. And by the end of this journey, you'll understand that silence, used with discipline, is not emptiness. It's intelligence in motion. So take a deep breath. This is not about becoming quiet. It's about becoming intentional. Every word, every pause, every silence will begin to work for you. Remember this: the smarter you become, the less you need to prove it. And with that, let's begin. Chapter 1, where we learn to stop listening to reply and start listening to understand. Chapter 1, the art of intentional listening. Listening is not passive. It's not just sitting quietly while someone speaks. It's an act of focus, of presence, of restraint. It's what separates thinkers from talkers, leaders from followers, and peace from chaos. Most people don't listen. They wait. They wait for their turn to speak, to interrupt, to inject their opinion. But when you truly listen, when you give someone the full weight of your attention, you begin to see them in a way that talking never allows. Think about the last time someone gave you their full attention. No phone, no rush, no distraction. You remember it, don't you? Because it's rare, it's powerful, it makes you feel valued. That's the same effect you can give others. Every time you hold your thoughts instead of throwing them forward, you give people space to open up. And in that space, truth lives. There's a saying, the one who listens understands twice, once through words and once through silence. That's the edge you gain when you start training your mind to listen deeply. You stop reacting. You start noticing. You begin to hear what people are really saying, not the surface words, but the emotional current beneath them. Listening like this changes how people see you. You'll become the one they trust, the one they turn to, the one who doesn't just hear them, but gets them. And you don't need to be the loudest voice in the room to command it. You just need to give your full presence. Because presence, not volume, creates influence. Now, I want you to practice this today. The next time someone speaks to you, pause. Hold your thoughts. Don't plan your answer. Don't analyze their every word. Just listen like there's a hidden truth in what they're saying. Because there always is. That's how understanding begins. That's how power grows quietly inside you. And when you do speak, you'll find that your words land with precision, not because you said more, but because you understood more. That's the power of intentional silence. Before we move forward, make this your first contract with yourself. Hit the like button right now if you promise to start practicing silence as a daily strength, not a weakness. That's your small declaration of self-discipline. Because silence isn't something you fall into. It's something you build. Chapter 2, the ego and the echo. Why do we talk so much? Because deep down, our ego fears invisibility. We speak to remind the world we exist. We explain ourselves because we can't stand the idea of being misunderstood. We argue because silence feels like surrender. But here's the truth. The need to always be heard is the loudest form of insecurity. And once you see that, you'll start letting go of it. Winners don't talk to be seen. They talk to be effective. They choose words like tools, not noise. They understand that every sentence either builds credibility or breaks it. There's a quiet confidence that comes from not needing to explain yourself, from not needing to prove your point every time, from knowing that silence doesn't mean defeat, it means control. Look at the most respected people in any field. They're not the ones shouting the loudest on social media. They're the ones observing, learning, waiting for the right moment to speak with precision. Because when they do, the world listens. Talking less doesn't mean doing less. It means you're channeling your energy where it matters most. It means you're not giving your power away in arguments that lead nowhere. It means you've mastered the difference between expression and validation. When you remove the need to prove, you create room to grow. Silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the presence of strength. So the next time you feel that rush to defend yourself, pause. The next time you feel the itch to jump into a debate, pause. The next time you feel your ego rising to speak, pause. Because that pause, that brief space between thought and reaction, is where transformation lives. You don't owe everyone an explanation. You don't need to answer every accusation. You don't need to win every conversation. What you need is mastery over your own energy. And that begins when you stop letting the ego drive your mouth. Remember this line: you're not misunderstood. You're just over-explaining to people who stopped listening. Let your results speak louder than your defense. Let your silence hold more gravity than their words. That's how you win without arguing. That's how you rise without noise. I want you to pause this audiobook for a moment. Look around you. Think about how much of your life is filled with words that didn't need to be said. What could your relationships, your career, your focus become if you only spoke when it mattered most? That's where we go next, to understand how awareness can turn silence into strategy. Continue when you're ready. Chapter 3. Reading the Unspoken. You can't understand people by what they say. You understand them by what they don't say. The words are surface. The silence is the depth. If you learn to read silence, to listen to the pauses, the hesitations, the tone behind the tone, you'll start seeing the real story everyone else misses. Because people rarely speak their full truth. They speak in layers. They speak in masks. And every mask leaves cracks if you're quiet enough to notice. In this chapter, we go deeper, beyond words, into the body language, the energy, the rhythm that reveals everything hidden beneath. Most people hear with their ears. Winners listen with their eyes. You can see truth long before you hear it. Watch how someone breathes when they talk about what matters. Watch their eyes when you ask something uncomfortable. Notice the way their shoulders rise when they're hiding something, or how their hands shake slightly when they feel cornered. These are the languages that don't need sound, and silence is what gives you access to them. When you talk too much, you blur the picture, but when you're still, details emerge. You start to see how emotion moves through a person, how fear hides in micro-expressions, how confidence carries stillness, how deceit struggles to maintain calm. In 2025, awareness is a superpower. We live in a world of constant communication, but minimal connection. Everyone is speaking, few are perceiving. That's why the one who listens wins. In negotiation, in leadership, in friendship, even in love, understanding the unspoken gives you clarity no amount of talking can. There's a story I often tell. A woman named Clara worked as a project manager in Berlin. She noticed one of her colleagues, Thomas, always nodded in agreement during meetings, but his eyes told a different story. His gaze drifted, his hands tightened. She didn't confront him, she just observed. A week later, the project hit a delay, and Thomas confessed he had been too afraid to admit he didn't understand part of the plan. Clara's silence saw what his words concealed, because silence reveals what words hide. That's awareness, that's power. And it's not just about others, it's about you. When you cultivate silence, you start hearing your own inner dialogue more clearly. You begin to notice the tone of your thoughts, when they're anxious, when they're scattered, when they're sharp. You start catching patterns in your reactions. You stop speaking out of emotion and start acting out of clarity. Awareness begins with you before it expands to others. If you can't read your own silence, you'll misread everyone else's. Here's a truth that changed everything for me. Silence is a microscope. It magnifies everything the noise hides. When you turn down your external volume, the endless opinions, the notifications, the chatter, you begin to hear life at a higher resolution. You start to understand why people behave the way they do. You see emotion not as chaos, but as language. And you begin to master interactions because you're not reacting to noise. You're responding to patterns. This is what makes silence dangerous to the shallow and priceless to the wise. Let's practice this together. The next time you're in a conversation, don't rush to fill every pause. Let silence stretch a few seconds longer than usual. It will feel awkward at first, but in that space, people reveal themselves. Some will rush to speak again, trying to fill the gap. That tells you they're uncomfortable with stillness, which means they're usually uncomfortable with truth. Some will hold eye contact and breathe. That tells you they're grounded, thoughtful, real. And you'll start noticing micro shifts, a small blink before a lie, a breath held before an answer, the way someone looks down when they're ashamed or sideways when they're defensive. You'll realize communication is a dance, but most people never learn the rhythm because they never stop making noise. When you speak less, you see more. When you see more, you understand deeper. When you understand deeper, you control outcomes others can only guess at. That's the real influence, quiet influence. Now don't confuse observation with judgment. We're not learning silence to become critics. We're learning it to become aware. Awareness gives you empathy. Judgment gives you ego. Choose empathy. When you observe someone without labeling them, you learn faster. You stop reacting to the surface and start responding to the essence. That's what wise people do. They respond, not react. And there's another truth you'll find as you master awareness. The more you understand others, the less you need to talk. Because when you see the full picture, you stop arguing with fragments. You stop trying to convince people who aren't ready. You stop wasting energy explaining what silence can demonstrate better. That's what emotional intelligence really is. Knowing what not to say, when to say nothing, and when silence itself is the strongest statement in the room. Let me tell you something profound about leadership. The best leaders in history weren't the ones who spoke the most. They were the ones who understood the moment before they spoke. Their silence was never emptiness. It was preparation. They waited until their words could carry precision, until they could cut through noise like a blade through fog. When you reach that level of mastery, your presence will speak before your mouth ever does. People will start sensing it. They'll feel your composure. They'll notice your calm. And that calm will make them trust you more than any speech ever could. Because silence communicates confidence, not the loud, insecure kind and the quiet, grounded kind that says, I know who I am, I don't need to prove it. Silence doesn't make you invisible, it makes you undeniable. So starting today, practice observation over expression. You don't need to fix every misunderstanding. You don't need to respond to every challenge. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is no move at all. Before we close this part, here's your personal reflection. When was the last time you let silence teach you something you couldn't have learned through talking? Write it down. That's your awareness checkpoint. And if this chapter already opened your eyes, pause for a second and hit like, not for me, but as a contract that you'll begin using silence as your greatest communication skill. Then go to the comments and tell me what moment of silence in your life taught you the most. Because when you share it, you remind someone else that stillness is not weakness. It's strength in disguise. We're just getting started. In the next chapter, we go deeper into a level of mastery most never reach, using silence not just to understand, but to influence. In Chapter 4, we'll explore the silent advantage, how speaking less makes you more persuasive, more respected, and more in control of every interaction you have. Don't rush. Take a breath. Let this sink in. Influence without words. Silence is not passive. It's persuasive. It's not withdrawal. It's control. And the moment you understand that, your entire relationship with power begins to change. See, most people think influence means talking louder, commanding rooms, filling space. But true influence begins in restraint, in the discipline to not speak first, to not reveal everything, to not let your energy scatter through unnecessary words. You don't win arguments by overpowering people. You win them by outlasting them. You don't earn respect by explaining yourself endlessly. You earn it by saying less and meaning more. Because silence forces others to think. And when people start thinking, they start revealing themselves. Let's start with a truth you've probably felt but never put into words. The person who controls the silence controls the room. Watch any negotiation, any debate, any confrontation. Silence is where the power shifts. When you say something and stop talking, the other person feels pressure to fill the space. And in that moment, they often reveal what they didn't intend to. They speak too fast, over-explain, justify, confess, or expose their motives. Meanwhile, the one who stays silent, collects information, reads the energy, and decides the next move calmly. That's what I call the silent advantage. It's not manipulation. It's emotional intelligence. It's patience turned into power. A friend of mine, Arjun, works in corporate law in Mumbai. He told me something brilliant. I win cases in silence. When his opponent finishes speaking in court, he never jumps in immediately. He waits. He lets the silence expand just long enough to make the other side nervous. Often, They start talking again, trying to fill the tension, and in doing so, they weaken their own argument. That's the art. The pause is not empty, it's strategic. It says, I am not rushed. I am not moved by emotion. I choose when to speak. And that subtle control changes how others perceive you, because power is felt before it's heard. Now let's take this beyond business or strategy. Think about relationships. Think about conversations that spiral into unnecessary conflict. Have you ever noticed how arguments escalate because both people keep trying to be understood at the same time? Nobody listens. Everyone defends. But the moment one person stops talking and starts observing, the tone changes. Emotion drains from the noise. Truth emerges. Sometimes the most healing thing you can give another person is not a reaction, it's your silence. Because silence doesn't argue, silence listens. And silence gives others the room to reveal what's really behind their words: pain, fear, confusion, insecurity. You can't see any of that if you're talking. Here's a universal law of communication. People trust the calm. When you speak less, you come across as composed, deliberate, grounded, and that makes others feel safe, even if they don't consciously realize it. The loudest person in the room often sounds insecure. The quiet one, mysterious, collected, someone you want to listen to, because silence creates gravity. It makes people lean in. They wonder what you're thinking. They start paying attention. And that's how influence begins. In today's hyper-connected world, silence has become rare. And rarity always holds value. Everybody is broadcasting, posting, sharing, shouting. But the one who can stay grounded, deliberate, and quiet in the storm stands out like fire in the dark. Silence has become the new charisma. You don't need to be the loudest to be remembered. You just need to say the things that matter and let your silence do the rest. It's like music. Notes matter, but the pauses between them make it art. In conversation, words matter, but the pauses give them meaning. I once met an old chess master in Prague. He said something I never forgot. I don't play my opponent, I play his impatience. He'd sit for minutes before moving a piece, calm and unreadable. Eventually, his opponents would break, fidgeting, second-guessing, rushing moves. Silence disarmed them. That's not just chess, that's life. When you're calm while others panic, when you're patient while others rush, when you're silent while others overreact, you win, not by aggression, but by awareness. That's why winners don't fear silence. They use it like a sword. Now, this doesn't mean you withdraw completely. Speaking less doesn't mean disappearing. It means when you speak, your words carry intention. You make silence your foundation, not your cage. When silence comes from strength, it commands. When it comes from fear, it isolates. The difference is awareness. So check yourself. Are you quiet because you're afraid or because you're in control? When you understand that difference, you'll move differently. Your silence will stop being defensive and start being magnetic. Let's make this practical. Here are 3 places you can start using silence for influence. 1. In meetings or debates, don't rush to answer. Let the room sit in your pause. You'll notice that people often answer their own questions when you give them time. 2. In arguments, instead of shouting back, say less. Silence diffuses heat faster than shouting ever can. The calmer you are, the more control you hold. 3. In negotiations, ask your question, then stay quiet. Most people talk themselves out of good deals by not being able to sit with silence. Silence forces truth. Silence reveals motive. Silence earns respect. Your silence speaks volumes when your presence is loud enough. Remember this every time you feel the need to over-explain. You don't need to fill every space with words. You just need to fill it with presence. And before we close this part, here's a truth to hold on to. In a world obsessed with talking, those who master silence lead the conversation, even when they're not speaking. So take a moment, pause, reflect. If this chapter already shifted something inside you, hit like right now. Not for validation, but as a declaration. I choose silence as strategy. Then drop a comment. Tell me, where in your life do you need to start using silence as your advantage? Because awareness is the beginning of mastery. Now, take a deep breath. Because in the next chapter, silence becomes something even greater. A tool not just for influence, but for understanding yourself. We dive into inner silence, how to hear your own voice in a world full of noise. It's not about communication with others anymore. It's about reconnection with you. And that's where the real transformation begins. Hearing yourself before the world speaks. There's a silence that's external, the one between words, between meetings, between conversations. And then there's another kind, the internal silence, the one between thoughts. That's the kind winners chase. Because until you can hear yourself beneath the noise of the world, you'll keep mistaking movement for progress. You'll keep chasing validation that never satisfies. You'll keep confusing loudness with clarity. The truth is simple. You cannot lead, connect, or grow until you've learned to listen inwardly. And that kind of listening requires one thing most people never practice: solitude. We live in a generation allergic to silence. Every free second is filled with notifications, playlists, messages, scrolling. We've turned distraction into oxygen. And in doing so, we've lost the art of being alone with our own thoughts. But the people who change their lives, the ones who lead movements, build empires, write stories that last, they all have one thing in common. They know how to retreat into silence. Because silence isn't emptiness. It's signal. It's the frequency where you finally hear your own truth. Let me take you somewhere for a moment. Imagine you're standing at the edge of the ocean before sunrise. No phones, no people, no sound but the waves. You breathe, and for the first time in months, your thoughts slow down. You notice how much noise you've been carrying inside, how many opinions that aren't yours, how many worries you borrowed from others. That's when you realize silence isn't just peaceful. It's clarifying. It's cleansing. You begin to see yourself clearly again. This isn't philosophy. It's necessity. Because when your mind is constantly noisy, every decision becomes harder. You can't tell what's intuition and what's impulse. You can't tell if you're chasing goals because they matter or because someone convinced you they should. Silence removes the fog. Here's a truth that will follow you for life. You can't understand the world if you can't first understand your own mind. And understanding your mind begins with stopping long enough to actually hear it. That's what inner silence gives you, not comfort, clarity. When you start spending time in silence, things rise to the surface. Old fears, regrets, hopes you buried. It's not always pleasant, but it's real. And facing reality even the uncomfortable kind, is the first step to mastery. In Tokyo, I once met a man named Rin who ran a high-pressure marketing firm. He told me he was constantly exhausted, mentally fried. Every decision felt urgent. Every moment felt heavy. He tried vacations, therapy, self-help books. Nothing helped. Until one day, during a business trip, he stumbled into a Zen garden near Kyoto. He sat down. No plan, no agenda, and just listened to the sound of the wind. Minutes passed, then hours. He said it was the first time in years he felt his own heartbeat without panic. He started practicing this kind of silence every morning. Not meditation in the strict sense, just sitting quietly, eyes open, fully present. Within 6 months, his employees said he'd changed. He was calmer, sharper, more decisive. He didn't talk as much in meetings, but when he did, everyone listened. His business grew faster, but more importantly, his peace grew deeper. Because when you find inner silence, everything else you build stands on solid ground. Here's what most people get wrong. They think silence is about turning off the world. It's not. It's about tuning into yourself. You can be in a noisy room and still be internally silent. You can be surrounded by chaos and still have peace. Because silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the absence of noise inside you. That's mastery. That's when you stop reacting to every emotion, every trigger, every external storm. You start choosing your responses. You start noticing thoughts before they control you. You start seeing situations clearly instead of emotionally. That's what emotional intelligence feels like from the inside. Quiet, confidence. Now let's make this practical. How do you build inner silence in a noisy life? You start small. You build daily rituals that create space for stillness. Here are 3 that winners practice. 1. The morning minute. Before you check your phone, before you talk to anyone, take 1 minute of silence. Just breathe. Feel your heartbeat. Remind yourself that the day begins within you, not outside you. 2. The digital fast. Once a day, set your devices aside for an hour. No music, no scrolling, no background noise. Let your mind detox. At first, it will itch for distraction. That's how addicted you've become. But once you push through, you'll feel an alertness you forgot you had. 3. The reflective night. Before bed, sit for a few minutes and ask yourself, what did I feel today? What did I avoid? What did I learn? Don't analyze. Just listen to your own mind. The more you listen, the more honest it becomes. Inner silence doesn't just make you peaceful, it makes you powerful. Because clarity is power. Once you're clear, you stop chasing validation. You stop reacting to everything that tries to pull your attention. You stop wasting energy defending yourself. You move differently, speak differently, work differently, love differently. You become deliberate. People will start noticing it, that grounded stillness. They'll say you seem calm, mature, unshakable, but you'll know it's not luck. It's silence, doing its quiet work. Peace is not found when life gets quiet. It's found when you do. Before we move on, I want you to pause and make a promise to yourself, not to live without sound, but to create space for silence every single day, even 10 minutes, even 2. Because those moments are not wasted, they are invested. Every minute you spend in silence is a deposit into your awareness account. And awareness is what compounds into wisdom. Now take a deep breath. If this chapter connected with you, hit like, not as a reflex, but as a symbol of commitment. Then in the comments, Write one word that describes how silence makes you feel. That word will become your anchor, your reminder of the state you're building. And when you're ready, continue to the next part. Silence evolves into something greater, a discipline of mastery. It's where control, influence, and inner stillness fuse into a way of living. We'll call it the discipline of the unspoken. That's where everything you've learned so far becomes who you are, where silence becomes strength. There's a difference between being quiet and being disciplined in your silence. Quiet is accidental. Discipline is intentional. Quiet people avoid noise. Disciplined people master it. That's the shift we're building here, from using silence as a reaction to using it as a weapon. Because when silence becomes a daily practice, it no longer depends on mood or environment. It becomes your character. And character, not talent, is what defines long-term greatness. The people you admire, the ones who carry that calm, confident energy, they're not naturally serene. They've trained themselves. They've learned when to speak, when to pause, when to wait. They've learned that reaction is weakness and restraint is power. They live by one silent rule: control the impulse, and you control the outcome. That's what the discipline of the unspoken really means. Not suppressing emotion, but channeling it. Turning chaos into composure, turning noise into insight. Let's talk about control. Not the kind that manipulates others, but the kind that manages yourself. When you speak less, you notice more. When you rush less, you decide better. When you defend yourself less, you grow faster. Discipline in silence is not about isolation. It's about precision. It's about saying exactly what you mean, no more, no less. It's about using your energy wisely, like a sculptor carving a masterpiece. Every word you speak either builds your reputation or dilutes it. So choose them like currency. Spend them only where they matter. There's a beautiful proverb from Ghana. Wisdom is like a baobab tree. No one person can embrace it. But you can start climbing, and the first step of that climb is silence. The second step? Discipline. The choice to keep climbing when your impatience wants to shout. Discipline is not built in grand moments. It's built in micro decisions. Moments when you want to interrupt, but don't. Moments when you want to argue, but breathe instead. Moments when you want to speak, but you wait because you're listening for what's true. That's the real work. And it's not glamorous, it's slow. But it builds something stronger than skill: control. In 2025, discipline is rare. We glorify expression, impulsivity, transparency. Everyone's broadcasting their every thought. But the disciplined are doing something different. They're observing, they're refining, they're mastering themselves in private. And that's why their results speak louder than the world's noise. Because silence disciplines your tongue, discipline refines your energy. And energy determines everything. If your energy is scattered, your words will be weak. If your energy is centered, your words will move mountains. Here are 3 practices to help you live the silent way. 1. The grounded greeting. When you walk into a room, enter with calm energy. Before you speak, observe. Before you shake a hand, look into eyes. People will feel your composure before they hear your voice. 2. The quiet reset. During your day when things feel chaotic, don't vent immediately. Don't post, don't rant, don't complain. Step away, breathe. Sit in silence for 60 seconds. That minute of stillness will save you from hours of regret. 3. The reflective exit. At the end of each day, before you sleep, ask yourself, did I speak from peace or did I speak from pressure? Did my silence today come from fear or from strength? Answer honestly. That reflection builds awareness, and awareness is the soil where growth takes root. When you begin living like this, people around you change too. They start mirroring your energy. Arguments fade faster. Relationships deepen. Opportunities flow naturally toward calm confidence. Because energy travels faster than sound, and your silence will become your signal. Stillness is not the absence of life. It is the presence of mastery. Before we close, I want you to pause right here. Yes, right now. Think about the version of you that started this audiobook and the version of you that's here now. You've shifted. You've grown. You've slowed your breath. You've learned that silence isn't emptiness. It's evolution. You've learned that understanding doesn't come from noise. It comes from awareness. And if you hold on to this, everything else in your life, your relationships, your career, your peace, will start transforming quietly from the inside out. If this journey changed something in you, pause and hit, like right now. Not for numbers, but as a final seal of self-respect. That click is a quiet declaration. I choose stillness in a world of noise. Then go to the comments and write one line, the one that stayed with you through this audiobook. Your line might become someone else's turning point. And if you haven't yet, subscribe, not to follow, but to stay accountable. Because this audiobook isn't the end. It's the beginning of a new rhythm, a life built one silent, intentional moment at a time. And if someone in your life needs this message, someone overwhelmed, overreacting, or overtalking, send this to them. Not to lecture them, but to remind them. Sometimes the loudest way to win is to say nothing at all. Disclaimer. This audiobook is educational and motivational in nature. It does not offer financial, legal, or medical advice. Its purpose is to help you build awareness, discipline, and emotional clarity. But your path, your pace, and your choices remain your responsibility. Silence is not retreat. It's readiness. When you master silence, you stop chasing understanding and start embodying it. You stop proving yourself and start improving yourself. You stop fighting for attention and start commanding it effortlessly. You become untouchable, not because you're loud, but because you're grounded. So remember this. The world belongs to those who know when to speak and when to simply stand still. Build yourself every single day, quietly, consistently, intentionally, and one day you'll look back and realize your silence spoke louder than words ever could.